We have Genshin Impact drama within the Genshin Impact modding community. Now, before we get into this, just want to say, guys, I was wearing the most minimal amount of eye makeup early today, and then I took a nap, and then it kind of rubbed off. So let's just ignore my face. I'm like basically not even wearing any makeup right now. I was gonna put some on, and then I got lazy. Anyways, let's get into this. So this is the mod in question, and this is the person who made the mod, Mimo 4E, who I will be calling Mimo. And Mimo says, here's my Varisa redesign 3D model. Planning to start modding it in game tomorrow. This version draws inspiration from Zulu culture while highlighting the fierce luchadora that she is. By the way, I want to apologize. The last time I've touched Genshin Impact was like eons ago, so my pronunciation for new characters is gonna suck. But yeah, so this is the redesign in question. But this is a photo of Arisa's design in game, so you can kind of see the difference between the two. Now, to provide a little bit of context for those of you guys who don't know Genshin, and I'm gonna say my Genshin familiarity is quite low because I barely play. Hoyoverse and Genshin Impact has historically had issues with whitewashing their characters, with their darkest skin character being still very pale, and they have characters that should come from a background in which they likely should be dark skinned from my understanding, right? Which is extremely minimal, so please do some extra research. But Hoyoverse chooses to make the designs very light. They also have a whole other thing also about like, body inclusivity and making all the characters with like basically the same body type ever. So there's all of that. Coffee writes, my perspective on the Varesa mod and working with Mimo. And real quick, I feel like I don't have to say this again. Please don't send hate to any parties involved. That is not what this is about. That is not cool. We're not about that, okay? For some extra context, I do want to add, from my understanding, Mimo is an adult and Toffee is a minor. I believe Toffee may be 15. So just keep that in mind because we do have that dynamic happening of an age gap, right? So Toffee writes, on February 11th, I reached out to Mimo about Varesa. I asked her if she was planning to make a Varesa mod and if she wanted to use my design for it. Please note, I didn't ask her to straight up mod my design as my offer was conditional. So in the DMs, Toffee writes, hi, I was gonna ask if you're planning a Varesa mod because I'm already cooking up a redesign, so I was wondering if I could help you and save you the work. No pressure. And Mimo says, feel free to share it with me. Honestly, Varesa looks very disappointing to me. Even Mizuki was better. So they discuss a little bit about the characters, and Toffee says, I think if she had cultural elements, she'd be matching up there with like Satali and Jansen as really good base designs. Sorry guys, my pronunciation sucks. And Mimo says, you could sketch up an idea of what her redesign could be. Honestly, I have no idea what to do with her. And Toffee says, all right, thanks for giving me the time of day. So Toffee adds, this means that my offer was only open based on some determining factors. The main factor for this one was if she already had a mod plan in mind. My intention was to save her the work of design and research so she can get to modding. And the screenshot Toffee highlights could help you and save you the work. Toffee adds, the first thing Mimo is doing is portraying me as somebody exploiting her for my own devices. However, this isn't true. She had full-on choice whether to collab with me, and she encouraged this, telling me to sketch a design and feel free. So added screenshots where Mimo says, feel free to share it with me, and you could sketch up an idea of what her redesign could be. So Toffee adds, I'm not a stranger to collaborative design. In fact, I have made quite a few friends solely by helping with things regarding both design and culture. I have many people who can vouch for my love of character design and culture, and this was an expression of it. Mimo was quite happy to do it, showing no discomfort at all. From that point, I began drafting the design. Mimo had little to no influence on the design. At most, she would tell me if an idea was too ambitious for a mod, and that's all. Every idea was my own, fruits of my own work. So here we have a scrolling screen grab of the chat where you can see Toffee is sending screen grabs of the design so we can see the design process, elements that were changed, and inspo photos were added as well. And then Mimo replies, that's a really cute concept. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's possible to change the shape of the flames on her mask, but the rest is adorable. Eventually, as I finished multiple design sources for her to draw on, a lot of them were essential to designing her as they provided more detail and insight to how she would look fleshed out. Things went quiet for a while, and I asked if she was still planning on working on it. And here we can see some design elements that were added, like the neck collar, the tattoo on the horns, and then there is a clip on the hair, band-aids, and then pearls on the hair. Some more of the details we can see with the horns. And then in Twitter DMs, Toffee says, also not to be annoying or impatient, any idea when you'll get started on the mod? I just got her, so I'm so excited. Mimo says, I started it today actually. And Toffee says, wow, for real? I'd be very happy to get constant updates. I love watching things come together, especially creative processes. Mimo says, I can show you the shape keys on the mod. Let me get to my PC for a sec, just woke up. And Toffee says, oh, take your time, don't feel forced to do anything. And Mimo says, do you mind joining my server Twitter, by the way. I post all of my work in progresses there, and I just posted a work in progress of this project. Toffee writes, this is when she invited me to her server so I could see everything going on, and things are pretty tame. She'd show me the design, I'd rave about how much I loved it and how happy I was, and everything was fine. This was until I posted her model to my page. She expressed being uncomfortable with it, and I completely understood. And later, I thought about her points about crediting and messaging her about how I wanted to be credited. As you can see, I didn't accuse her of trying to hog credits or anything. We came to an agreement, but I may have misconstrued it, since she sent a tweet with the @ in the main post. I thought that's how I would be credited. When this wasn't the case, I didn't really mind. Despite the fact that many did not know it was a collab, my name would be everywhere for people who downloaded the mod, and that's credit enough. So here are the DMs between Toffee and Mimo. Toffee says, hi, I was thinking about your point about the model, and I was gonna ask if you can put my user on the model and tweet too, please. Like everywhere, if you'd credit yourself, just put a little note crediting me for the design, because it's still quite a meaningful design to me, and it would mean a lot if you did. Thank you. I hope that's okay. And Mimo says, hi, I totally understand, and I'll make sure to include credit for your design alongside my own when I post the mod. That said, for any future posts, I probably won't mention credits, like with my other later posts about mods I make. Anybody curious can always check the downloaded post for further details. Since I handle the modeling, modding, programming, and adjusting the design to fit my vision, I want to keep things consistent with how I usually share my work. I hope that makes sense, and thanks for reaching out. Toffee says, okay, that's fine. Just like you, I'm a big fan of crediting and stuff, so I wanted it to be known that it's my design, you know? Especially because I'm a smaller account and I've seen how little you get credited. I can't imagine what it would be like for me. Thank you. I'd also be very happy to help you with any mods in the future if you ever want to. No pressure. And Mimo says, don't worry, anyone using the mod will know you contributed to it. I'll also make an announcement post on Twitter when I upload it and credit you there. Plus, I'll mention you in the YouTube description of the mod showcase when I post it. I just don't mention credits when it comes to small posts since I say where to get the mod from. And then Mimo sends a tweet that they've posted where you can see edit by and then a user. And then Mimo sends in another example. Here is when I can't possibly fit the credits for the OC design or the contributors to the Emily mod or the Mavuika mod. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but anyways, I'm preoccupied so I can't continue the conversation, but I can check your messages when time allows. And Toffee says, it's fine, you totes are. Thanks for being so understanding. And then this is in reference to not being credited that way. So Toffee, again, was expecting to be credited like the other person. So like in this example where in the main body of the tweets and in this case it was for an edit, the person who made the edit was directly credited in the main body. But here Toffee shows how they were credited, where they were credited in the comment section, where Mimo says, here's the art I took inspiration from when making the mod, and they linked Toffee's artwork. Then Toffee continues, but then I noticed something. She said I was inspiration. I found this weird. I also found it strange how people would compliment the design, something she had very little influence over. People weren't complimenting the mod, but the design, and she wouldn't correct them when they referred to it as her design. She would take compliments in stride as if it was her design. So here we can see examples where somebody says, you just never miss, this one is so cute. And another person says, Mimo, you're a god, you fixed her horns, OMG, and her hooves are adorable. And somebody says, I love seeing your redesigns for Natlan characters. I basically use every single one you've made for them. Mimo says, oh, that means so much to me, thank you. I'm really happy you're enjoying them. Toffee adds, now let's take a second to dive into words. The word inspiration is a small thing, right? Well, not really. Let's look at the definition, as listed by copyright.com, 1506collective.com, and implied by the dictionary definition. Basically, it means that it was used as a basis for the artwork as said here, but you add your own twist to it. Toffee continues, inspiration is to be stimulated something to create your own separate thing, usually creatively. It may share references to the stimulus, but it's entirely one's own nonetheless. Let's take a look at my design and Mimo's mod and see how different they are. And here we can see the examples. So for me, when reading this part of the tweet, it got a little bit confusing for a sec because Toffee adds like 2 sets of photos. So it makes it look like photo A is Toffee's design, photo B is Mimo's design, but it's actually not, I think, the case. The way that I kind of read this is that this is actually Mimo's design. And then here we can see the original design that Toffee did. The things circled in blue are things that Mimo added. And from my understanding, the things circled in red are the changes Toffee made to the original Verisa design. But the elements that Mimo changed were adding vitiligo to the skin. The way Toffee drew the design, the character is wearing 2 tights, so white tights on both legs, and Mimo removed one of them on the legs. They also changed the hair bubbles. So Toffee added like little bubbles to the hair like this, like little hair ties, and then the colors were changed. Mimo added a bow to one ear that wasn't present on Toffee's design. They also added a basket, and that looks to be about it. The rest of the design looks very, very on par with the design that Toffee made. Oh, the one other difference is the belt, actually. The belt patterning was not the design that Coffee made. And then here is a screen grab of the mod in-game. Toffee adds, not very different, right? As highlighted in the second image, there are differences, but these differences either build upon my design, were ideas from my design, or incredibly minimal and do not change the base design enough to set it apart from my design. I understand this may be a slip of the tongue and miswording, so I decided to take it up in DMs, something any person would do. I very politely explained my side of the story and she responded. This is where the bulk of my issue stems from, the absence of credits rather than the wording and handling of it under the post and afterwards. So here are the DMs where Toffee says, again, I am sorry if this is annoying. I acknowledge you quoted my post under yours, but I really want to know why you said you took inspo when it's blatantly my own work and research. I understand it might have been because you tweaked a few aspects of her design, but still, crying face. I'm so sorry. I don't want to come off as pushy or rude or anything. And Mimo writes, no worries, I understand your concern. I mentioned that I took inspiration because, while I reference your original design, many aspects of my mod, such as the vitiligo, body size toggles, butterflies, different colors, basket design, back details, horn shape changes, and hearts on the hooves, were entirely my own ideas. Since I made significant changes and added my own creative vision, I believe referring to it as taking inspo is both fair and accurate. I've explained this clearly, and I won't be responding to further questions on the matter. I have a life to attend to, and this conversation has become exhausting. If you would like me to recreate any other character redesigns, please note that you'll need to commission me moving forward, as I've spent significant time addressing your demands on how I should approach my work. I hope you understand and will respect my boundaries from here on out. So Toffee writes, she claimed she had changed the design a significant amount, but where? All the changes were very minimal, still making it my design. Ironically, the new design Mimo has made, that I should still be credited for, by the way, fits the bill more, taking elements from my design to change it for her very own version. This is inspired. Had she posted this and called me inspo, I wouldn't have minded, but she posted a near replica. So in the DMs, Toffee kind of like wrote over it. So about the vitiligo, Toffee adds, the vitiligo is a toggle on Verisa and on other mods, therefore it can't be counted. For the body size toggles, so this is something that was added to the mod, but you can make Verisa bigger or smaller, like weight-wise. Toffee writes, doesn't own body variation, also a toggle, therefore can't count. About the butterflies, Toffee adds that it was my idea, she only moved the placements. For different colors, that it's negligible, she changed the colors of my ideas. The basket was my idea. It's only there because I asked. She designed it though. For the back details, it's common sense. Her shawl and beads don't stop at the back. For the horn shape changes, Toffee adds my horn tattoos were used. And for the heart on the hooves, Toffee says hooves were my idea. The hearts were a minor change. And here again, we can see the mod in game. And this is the design that Toffee made. And again, by the way, to really seal the deal, I have all of these lined up. The one on the very right is the original design. The one on the very left is the redesign that Toffee did. And the design in the middle is the one that Mimo claims to be theirs. So as you can see, if you do look at it side by side, Toffee did add a lot of extra interpretations to the design with this like shawl, with the horn tattoos, etc. And to be honest, a lot of those design elements, in my personal opinion, were heavily carried over by Mimo's work. If I were to look at this design that was uploaded by Mimo and Toffee's design, I would literally assume it was the same thing. I would not make the assumption that this design, that is this mod's design, is one that is different from Toffee's on first glance, you know? Like if I look closely, oh, there's a butterfly on the ear, wow, you know, but I'm curious about your thoughts. Would you have made that assumption, etc.? Just looking at the elements, I would have assumed it was Toffee's design. And in my personal opinion, I feel like if it comes to that, then you can't say you take inspiration, you know? Everything is subjective, right? Just because I think it looks extremely similar doesn't mean maybe somebody else might not think it looks extremely similar. I do personally think that if a majority of people would make the misconstrued assumption that your design is actually somebody else's design because it looks too similar, then you may be crossing the line. Now, there are obviously cases where people are straight bullshitting, pulling things out of their butt when they're comparing VTuber models, because everyone's always like, oh, you look like Shy Lily, when you clearly don't, right? But I do think also the other rule of thumb is like, what percentage of the design did you change? You know, what percentage of Toffee's design, the aspects of the design was changed? And again, I do agree with what Toffee added, in which the vitiligo doesn't count if it's a toggle, as in you can turn it off. And the body scaling doesn't count because you can also put it back to the default body shape. The other point that Toffee makes holds very well as well, because we are talking about the design. The body shape is not part of the design because this is a redesign of a character. So we can argue that body shape does actually count as part of the design for other aspects, but specifically in this case, when we're talking about a redesign of an existing character, where the body shape change was due to a slider that was added where you can put it back to the original, then that is not like a design change. We are talking specifically about the elements that Toffee designed themselves that were then still carried over to the final product with extremely minor changes, right? The leg warmers, the shawl, the horn tattoos, all of that is still kept. And I would also make a final point of the whole, like, I'm throwing out the arbitrary 50%, like, did you change more than 50% of the design? But, we could make the argument that in some cases, some things cannot really be changed, like if again, speaking about VTuber design, if you're gonna be like an orca VTuber, Shy Lily is an orca VTuber. So things that are just present in orcas will be present in your design. It doesn't mean it's exclusive to Shy Lily. Like orcas have a tail, okay, and there's a specific shape to it. Just because you have an orca tail with that shape doesn't mean you're copying Shy Lily, because the original idea is still from the orca itself. It's just, how do you implement this? How does it look like? Sizing, whatever. Those are the other aspects that will change. So I do want to acknowledge with this design that there are elements that need to be kept. Otherwise, we are deviating way too much from the character itself. And then it wouldn't be a redesign. We would go into like a complete rework of the character. But amongst the elements that are changed, very, very minimal, in my opinion, was added by Mimo. And so this is the side-by-side of the old design versus the new design, where here we can see this is the new design, and this one is the old one. Where the skirt was changed, we can see the shawl was changed, the body outfit was changed, the leg pieces, the fluff has changed, the hooves have changed. These are all design changes that Toffee has expressed they would be okay with Mimo making and then stating they took inspo from Toffee's design, because enough was changed to make Toffee comfortable. And for me, just looking at it, yeah, like enough was changed. So Toffee adds, so why am I still mad? Well, it's the fact that Mimo is spreading lies about me and warping my words. I wasn't mad she didn't credit me. I was mad she took credit and misworded it. As seen before, the word inspiration has specific connotations her previous model didn't fit. And here Mimo writes, this is a quote retweet in response to Toffee stating, watching as somebody conveniently gives up on something as soon as they said they credit me, hashtag noticing. Mimo says, I've credited Toffee in every post, linked their work in the comments, and added them to the mod's description. Yet they're claiming I sold their design for profit. I won't work with people who spread lies and send harassment my way. And Mimo adds, exactly, not only did I spend 30 plus hours on that mod, but Toffee wanted all the praise. When they weren't satisfied with the attention, they used the fact they're a minor to pressure me into giving them most of the credit for a model and mod they had no direct part in, aside from me using their 2D art as inspo. Toffee adds, while Mimo did credit me in the mod description and the mod menu, the main traction for her mods come from Twitter, and her behavior when I asked her about it, shutting down and convo and being rude, only spurred this reaction. And the screenshot where you can see the graphic says mod by Mimo, outfit design art by Toffee Todd. Toffee adds, there is more to the story from Discord, but the thread isn't big enough so I can't include it all. But this is the main bulk of the issue. There was another convo in Discord about it. It was the same as here. She was just rude and refused to word things as I asked, even if I was exceedingly patient towards her increasingly jarring attitude. She later agreed to do so on Twitter after a separate situation, but conveniently abandoned the mod right after due to my behavior being viewed as immature and rude, when I was only ever kind to her. So these are now the Discord messages. This all took place March 31st. Toffee says, while I understand your point, the term inspiration and references does make a big change, especially when people aren't seeing the post with credits and you're taking credit for it being your design in the comments. I understand that English isn't your first language, so I wouldn't mind explaining the difference between the two. I'm not saying my art should be included. I'm aware it wasn't, but they were all really important to my design process and figuring out the full design, as I repeatedly went back and forth between all four to make them look right to me, hence why I mentioned it. My intention wasn't at all to be belittling. I am very sorry I came off that way. My intention was trying to get across that it was a collaborative effort between the two of us, and I feel it's discrediting to say inspo and take credit when people say it's your design, when it's as much as yours as it is mine. I love and appreciate your effort. I'm very grateful towards all the work you're doing. It's more so about the way you worded it rather than the actual presence of credit, because it is there. I want to repeat, I'm not trying to belittle your work. It's amazing how much effort you put into this mod, and I'm so happy it's even here. But I can't help but feel like like my work is also being belittled when you're wording things and responding to comments the way you are. You deserve full and complete credit for the models. I just want to be recognized as more than inspiring the mods instead of a near replica. Again, I don't expect an instant reply. I understand you have things to do, so don't feel pressured and please take your time. Thank you for being so open to discussion. And then Mimo, I think, had said something along the lines of outfit design art by Toffee Todd. And Toffee says, yes, and I thank you for that. It's more so about how you are handling in the comments that rubbed me the wrong way. Mimo writes, if you think people are not looking at this, then how would you explain the fact they must have been able to see this image in order to comment on it? They must have seen your art in the comments in order to comment. And then in response to Toffee saying about how, oh, the comment responses rubbed them the wrong way, Mimo says, oh, I'm sorry that I'm being a positive person and thanking people for the nice things they tell me. I'm sorry, but this is just really immature behavior, and you have to spend too much time online to be so affected by such things when I've already done everything necessary for people to know you contributed to the mod by drawing the design. Please reread what I said because I won't reply further. I am not taking credit for the design. You are credited for that literally everywhere, in-game and outside the game. You said the art wasn't included, but I literally showed that it was. I'm confused by what you mean. I literally included it on Twitter for people to compare and credit you further. I never say anywhere that it's my design. The word inspiration fits given that it's not a direct adaptation and I change things, and many people use that interchangeably with the word reference. The difference is not as clear cut as you think. Even if there were any doubts of what degree my mod was based on your art, again, your art is included so people can literally see and compare themselves. Nothing is being hidden, nor am I in any way taking credit for the part of your design. And Toffee adds, hello, I'm back. I've molded over a bit and I've come to a conclusion. I'll address some of your points first. Well, yes, some people were complimenting your mods. A few people specifically mentioned things about the mod that relate to the design, accrediting it to you, hence why I'm upset. While yes, people might have scrolled past it to get to the comments, they either didn't read it or spare a glance at it. When you compare the posts, your post has 1,000 likes, the subsequent post crediting me has 32 likes, and the original comment has 9. Clearly, there's a disparity going on, which isn't your fault, of course. As you know, people don't read, so I'm not surprised people glossed over the credits. But this also means that when people accredit the design to you, they likely aren't aware of it being from me. People tend to not even like the OG post, they liked your link to it instead. This is why I think a quick at the bottom of the post is more preferable. People who don't expand the thread will see it. People will have direct access to my account and they can check my design for themselves. Moving forward, I'd appreciate it if you were to use different wording, please. Oh, my cat is here. I don't expect you to blast me on your socials, but wording is powerful. Terms like inspiration are for when the end product is vastly different to the muse. But as we both have acknowledged, that isn't the case here, as they're identical, meaning the wording is iffy. I think the best way to resolve the issue is whenever you make a big post about the mod, to tag me in the first post as design creds so people don't gloss over it as much. Again, I'm not trying to villainize or antagonize you because most of this isn't your fault. It's just the small things that are little in isolation that perpetuate the issue in the long run. Thank you for your patience. And Mimo adds, hey Toffee, I've already spent way too much time and energy on this discussion and it's leading nowhere. I have credited you in every possible way. Your name, your role, your art, links. Just like every other mod post that follows the standard of listing credits in the replies. You have repeatedly overstepped my boundaries and I won't tolerate it any further. It's not like I'm hogging credit. When people say your redesigns, they're referring to the 3D models I made, not just the concept art. I'm not going to remove and re-upload my post just to try and squeeze your username into the already insufferable Twitter character limit. The credit is there, clearly linked, and if people don't bother reading it, that's not on me. Also, demanding that you be the only one tagged in the post would be unfair to Zuku, who has also contributed to the mod. I won't dismiss somebody else's hard work just to cater to your personal expectations. If you're unwilling to accept the community standard for crediting creators of mods, that's your choice, but I'm done entertaining this. Due to your continued overstepping of my boundaries and the stress this has caused me, if you insist on pursuing this matter any further, I will be blocking and banning you. Naturally, you'll still be credited, but I refuse to engage in this any longer. This is my final decision. And Toffee says thanks for your time anyways. As usual, DMs are always open and I'll be happy to help you with anything else. And Mimo liked it. And so here, Toffee had written, TLDR, you can keep the old post up. When you make the aforementioned big post, I ask you to credit, ... And Mimo says, yeah, I can say based on in the future, don't worry. But I seriously thought you were trying to get me to delete like all my posts about Varisa. I don't know if you noticed, but back then you were contradicting yourself a lot. And what you wanted wasn't clear until you finally said in the end that you wanted me to delete my post and credit you in the main post. And here Mimo says, been working on my own take on Varisa's outfit design and I'm really excited to share it soon. I won't be posting the previous mod with Toffee's design, but look forward to my version. Toffee is adding, I'm not designing my post was petty. It was, but there's a difference between a small account with no views alluding to an issue and a massive account directly name dropping and adding somebody when they previously refused to do so. She has also been saying I've sent mutuals to harass her. However, this hasn't happened. The cases that have happened, I dealt with to the best of my ability. Her fans have been practically dragging me though. People have also been accrediting my design to her, proving my earlier points. So this was Toffee's post, and again, Toffee acknowledges that it was shady. And this was Mimo's post where they directly added Toffee on their page. Here is Toffee's straw page where allegedly Mimo's fans are sending some messages, writing, beg for a mod, got it for free, then lied, then you weren't credited. Dude. I remember when I was like this on Twitter, the app is not good for you, little buddy. You're a waste of oxygen, blah, 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 blah. Toffee writes, after this, she hasn't shown anything of her being harassed, nor have I seen anything of it. So I can't do anything about it, or else I would have. But I will say this, do not harass her on my behalf. It is not needed. My tweet was unnecessary, and for that I apologize, but her attitude towards me in this situation was also too. Just throwing in a couple of opinions of mine right here. Do I personally think there was a bunch of miscommunication that happened here? Yes, I personally do. I think in the beginning, when Toffee reached out to Mimo, Toffee might have felt like what they were expressing was clear. As a third party reading it, I feel like it isn't the most clear what Toffee was expecting. As in my opinion, if what Toffee was looking for was a collaboration with Mimo, they should have outright said it. Like, hey Mimo, are you working on a Verisa design? I am a designer and I was wondering if you would like to collab so I make the design and then potentially there might be some alterations given what you can and cannot render in 3D. And then you make the 3D render for the design and we collaborate on this mod together. But because it is worded as in, oh, I'm already cooking up a redesign, so I was wondering if I could help you save some work, no pressure. It can, to give some benefit of doubt, it can read like Toffee just wants to help out a little bit, and that's kind of all they were looking for, you know? So Coffee was talking about a collaboration, and there is room for misinterpretation in these DMs. But on the flip side of the coin, I would say that for Mimo and from Mimo's perspective, okay, if you go into this with the idea of, oh, here's somebody in my DMs offering me some design help. That's so cool. Like, I really would appreciate this. You get the design and you make very minimal changes to the design. In my opinion, you should then be crediting that person everywhere. Otherwise, don't take the design at all. If you look at the design and then you have no intention of using it, you could say something like, oh, you know, I appreciate so much for the design. Do you mind if I just like rework it in my own interpretation for the mod? And then Toffee probably would have been like, cool. And then if Mimo pulled up with the design they have now with, you know, the skirt change, the top change, etc., then Toffee probably would have been like, and you know, like a little credit being like, oh, I was inspired by Toffee's design. I think that would have been chill. But it seems like the biggest issue, which is what Toffee is having with this, is that again, there was that miscommunication in the beginning where I think Toffee was maybe expecting collaboration here, but because of how much of Toffee's design was used in the final product, that Toffee was then expecting a lot more credit than Mimo was willing to give. And again, in my opinion, if you are Mimo, if you are a designer, and somebody DMs you offering help, if you do not want to give the credit that is due, then don't accept help. I have a lot of people in my DMs offering me help, and I really, really appreciate it. I really do. Sometimes I actually do like reach out to you guys, like respond back, and I'm like, yo, can you help me with this thing? Obviously, with like credit and pay and stuff like that. But I will say though, for things that I have no intention of sharing the credit for like the worst way to phrase it, you know, as in like not for that reason, but more so like, oh, I have it covered. You know, I have the graphics done for this project, so I appreciate you for offering your services. I've got it covered. You can avoid this entire situation from happening by not even opening the can of worms in the first place. If you want to get credit for the whole thing, then don't take somebody else's design. Just say no. Just be like, oh, thank you so much for offering Toffee. Appreciate it. I'm good though. So if you are then going to accept the design, then you have to work through it ethically, right? In my opinion, Mimo basically used Toffee's design. The amount of changes that Mimo added, in my personal opinion, does not count enough as a unique design for Mimo. The new one does. The old one does not, because it was way too similar. You can't change 3 things, tiny little hair clips, and then call it a new design that is all yours. And in my personal opinion, the way Mimo is talking to Toffee can read very, in a way, degrading. Mimo sounds respectful for the most part, but the way that I read it, and maybe I'm a little sensitive to this, but it reads like an adult talking down to a child. Do you know what I mean? Adults, when they talk to kids, tend to sometimes have this like, I'm better than you undertone to it where it's like, I know better. You're a stupid child. They don't outright say that, but you can read it in the tonality of the words they chose. And if English is not Mimo's first language, that likely could also be a reason why it comes off this way. So maybe I'm reading too much into it. But in my personal opinion, Toffee has been absolutely nothing but kind and understanding, and has also catered a lot to Mimo's emotions and feelings in the way they were messaging back and forth that I personally don't have the emotional intelligence to do. Like, I'm way too blunt with my words to be doing that, but Toffee has been very understanding with like, "Oh, I totally understand it's not your fault. Like, it's mostly not your fault. Like, oh, I don't blame you for this, or it's not on you. Like, I should have clarified." Like, Toffee has done so much like very kind pandering, right, to Mimo's feelings, and Mimo has been very blunt, but with this like kind of like degrading isn't the right word, but I can't think of a better word to use in the scenario, but a kind of like holier than thou attitude in it that I personally don't like. I always think it's very interesting when people constantly reaffirm boundaries. You know, Mimo's like, "You're crossing my boundaries. This is my boundary." I wasn't there. I'm not in the DMs. We've only seen the screenshots we've gotten from Toffee, but I feel like Toffee was very respectful, and Toffee approached every point very respectfully. Like, "Hey, I just have this one thing, da 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 da," And what if you really break down all of Toffee's complaints? Toffee is only has one complaint split into like two pieces. The issue was, "Hey, if you are going to use my design to this extent, then please just give me credit where it is easy to see. Just don't make it seem like it was yours." The big thing about the comments, and I think the comment stuff was where Mimo was like really like about, where Mimo was like, "Oh, sorry, I was responding to nice comments." Like, do you not realize that when people are complimenting the design, it's not your design? Mimo, maybe I'm not seeing this right. I've 3D modeled before. I took 3D modeling classes in college, but Mimo was like, "Oh, but I made the 3D model, so therefore they're talking about my design of the 3D model." When you read the comments and one screenshot directly that was provided by Toffee, it was literally referring to the actual design. Like, here, you fixed her horns and her hooves are adorable, da 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 da. And like here, I love seeing your redesigns. I basically use every single one I made for them, heart. That second one could be referring to the 3D model instead of the actual like outfit design. But come on, man, like you kind of have to know they're referring to Toffee's design. The thing is, this was the hill Mimo died on, but I just think it's a very weird hill to die on. Like, will it kill you just to be like, "Thank you. It was Toffee's idea to like change the hoof colors," or, "Oh, thank you. It was at Toffee Todd did the tattoo on the horns. I'm really glad you like them." Like, will it kill you to add that? People will do that for me. They'll be in the comment section of my videos. They'll say one thing or another. They'll be like, "Oh, I really like," a hypothetical example, like, "Oh, I really like your makeup." If I was just like, "Thank you," that's chill. But if my friend did my makeup, you would be a great person if you were like, "Thank you so much. My friend at their username, if they're a social media person, did my makeup. Go check out her videos. Like, she does a lot of makeup content." It's free to add that. Mimo adding that would help Toffee a lot by getting them some exposure. And it is just like a good thing to do? So that's just the way that I look at it, where it's like the hill that you're dying on is one where all you have to do is drop a one liner appreciating the effort this other person put in. And that's why to me, it's always like a little, it feels some type of way. Another example, not to yap about myself too much, when people are like, "Oh my God, Kat, like I love your videos." Many times you guys probably have seen me comment, "Thank you so much. I really appreciate my editor because I wouldn't be able to have this YouTube channel without him." I could just be like, sometimes I'm just like, "Oh, thank you, but give credit where credit is due. It won't kill you, okay?" This is just where I stand on this whole situation so far, because there's more. Because again, I know Toffee is a minor, but Toffee is so well spoken, and I feel so icky being like mature for their age. But the way they have approached this situation and this conflict is very mature. They have taken the most professional way possible, first approaching it in DMs. And I don't like the idea of a perfect victim. I don't want people being like, "Oh, but like Toffee made a shady post." Da, 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 da." Dude, Toffee's like a kid, bro. Like, leave him alone. Kids make, shady posts or whatever. It was one freaking tweet where they didn't even mention the name. And it was so vague that you may not even know what it was really about? And then the adult in the situation directly added them. Like, come on, man. So I don't want people being like, "You did this," or like, "Yeah, well, Toffee was being petty," or whatever. And you know what? You have a right to be petty, okay? You can make little comments here and there. That's totally fine. Toffee never told anyone to attack Mimo. Toffee never even dropped Mimo's name in that tweet. What are we trifling about, guys? Come on. So then we have a twist to the situation because we have a Google Doc. We have this post by Annie Lien. Hopefully I'm reading their name right. But Annie writes Doc and thread addressing the misconceptions and allegations made against Mimio regarding the Verisa redesign situation. It includes timeline and proof, even of credits for the 2D art adapted that the artist initially acknowledged. The name of the artist is hidden. I did not write this document, but the person who wrote it did a good job. I was asked to post it since I have more followers. As for personal opinion, I recognize Mimo hasn't always done things right and that there might be valid issues people have with her. But in this particular situation, I think 100% she was in the right, and I hope the document helps clear up the lies. So this is the document in question. Also, sorry if I look over a little bit. My cat is absolutely freaking out right now. He's acting like there's a bug, and I'm a little nervous because I didn't see the bug. But he was literally like this earlier, and there was a spider, and he made the bug squeak again, and now he's very, 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 very interested in my beanbag in the corner. So pray for me, guys. Disclaimer. This document is not a call-out post, nor is it to justify any actions of individuals involved. It's made with the intent purpose of clarifying the drama to prevent misinformation and further harassment to anyone involved. The document serves to inform and clarify and is not created to invite discussion or debate. It is to inform. It was not made by Mimo nor her Discord mods. It was made by somebody who wishes the conflict will come to the end. And I'm going to summarize a little bit here. 1. Project and document context. So there's a couple people who contributed, with Mimo being the primary modder, the artist, a community artist who reached out to ask if the design could be modded into the game. So that would be Toffee, and the community member, a modder who assisted with implementing muscular variations. They basically emphasize this is not for hate and that they redacted the artist and the community member's name, but Mimo's name cannot be redacted due to, it's about Mimo. I would add that even though the artist name is redacted here, I'm going to continue calling them Toffee simply because Toffee's post was very viral with 13K likes, so we know it's Toffee, and I just think it'll make it more clear. But just for you guys to note, Toffee's name was redacted out of this. So 2, development context. So upon getting Toffee's concept art, the mod would begin development March 27th. And then as you can see, Mimo posted about this in their Discord. And then as you can see here, the community member, which is redacted, was helping with the body slider. And Mimo basically shouted that out in Discord, and that was posted the same day. And then Toffee was invited into the server. So here you can see Toffee says, "Wow, I'm so excited already. It looks great." And Toffee says, "Thank you." And the community member says hi. So then Mimo fully implemented the toggle alongside the artist banner. And so here you can see the before and after. The art is now added. And Mimo added both the community modder and Toffee. And then Toffee asks, "Hi, wait, Mimo, I don't know if it's possible and I don't want to trouble you, but maybe you could use the name card edit I made so the menu and the character matches. Totally fine if not." And then the name card edit was added. And then Toffee says, "Wow, it looks great." I think it was just referring to this in the corner. From my understanding, this little character in the name card, well, this is Verisa. Toffee did a little redraw of it. So they added the mod designs onto the little Verisa in the corner. So as you can see, the horn tattoos are now visible. Then the doc reads, "From here, Mimo would share the changes she made to Verisa's model. Toffee would mention the changes Mimo made differed from their concept art. Mimo would discuss the changes that differed, and Toffee would approve and praise the changes Mimo did." So here Mimo's like, "Oh, the model's pretty much done." Toffee says, "Wow, I love it. Out of curiosity, how come her hair beads are all the same color? I don't really mind, but originally I made them each color of the rainbow due to her namesake." And then Mimo adds, "The beads are blue, pink, and yellow." "What do you mean?" "Oh, also I did give her a basket." And then Toffee adds, "On the other side, they're orange, green, and purple." And then in response to the basket, Toffee says, "It's adorable." And Mimo says, "I didn't really want to add these colors since she already has so many colors going on." And Toffee says, "Oh, okay, makes sense. Still works given the fact that since the pink stands in for the red, they're all primary colors." And Toffee says, "I'm obsessed. Are you going to change the belt to match too?" "You don't have to, I'm curious." And Mimo says, "I'm doing it now." And Toffee says, "Yep, thank you, heart." And then Toffee adds, "I'd be so happy to help you with mods in the future. This is so fun." Mimo says, "I don't know if you noticed, but I added a butterfly to the ear." Toffee says, "I didn't." And Mimo says, "What do you think about the vitiligo?" And Toffee says, "I was wondering where her butterfly was. It's adorable." And Toffee says, "I really like it," referencing the vitiligo. "I think it makes her look even more colorful, which I love." And Mimo says, "I didn't want to give her a second stocking since the vitiligo is so pretty." And Toffee says, "Fair. I also thought that when I saw the vitiligo, because I'd want to show it off, so it makes sense leaving a large chunk of her skin visible so we can see it. Have you started the Night Soul design?" And Mimo says no, and Toffee says okay. Mimo says, "I'm still texturizing the belt, you know." And Toffee says, "Oh, it's fine, take your time. I'm so excited." Mimo says, I don't think I'll make a different outfit for her night soul since it's so short, honestly. And Toffee says, aw, that's fine. Doesn't she already have shorts built into her design? And Mimo says, yeah, she does. And Toffee says, so wouldn't it just be like removing assets similar to Zilonen removing her coat? And Mimo responds, I could try coding that, but I don't know if it would conflict with all the other code. Toffee says, okay, well, good luck. And Mimo says, thank you. Toffee says, it's fine if it doesn't happen. I just think it'd be an easy way to appease both Zulu and Mexican crowds because she get a design for both aspects. Is it okay if I show others the Varisa model or would you rather I not? It's so cool. 3. The unauthorized Twitter post. Shortly after this convo between Mimo and the artist, Toffee would request to share the progress. However, there was miscommunication here. Mimo believed the artist was sharing Varisa's progress with their friends when they were referring to social media. And here Mimo says, in response, at least mention me or something, then sure, and Toffee says, of course. So here, this was the tweet where Toffee posted it to Twitter, and they write, guys, Mimo did it like for real. At Mimo, thank you, posting the design progress. Mimo writes, Toffee, I allowed you to share it with friends, but please refrain from posting on socials. And Toffee said, oh, okay. It doesn't usually leave my circle, but I'll delete it BRB. It looks so good. And Mimo says, after all, it's my model, so the right to reveal it on social should be done with mutual consent. And Toffee says, of course. Mimo says the image also lacks a watermark, so reposters could also get to it. I try to make it a habit to watermark any image of my work that I post on Twitter nowadays after the Amelie fiasco, where my work in progress of the mod got reposted on Pinterest and by major Genshin accounts without credit. And again, just throwing in my 2 cents here, when Toffee says, oh, do you mind if I share it with friends? Like, I personally would have assumed it meant, like, I don't know, in DM somewhere, being like, oh, look how cool this is. But I completely acknowledge that it can also be like a big miscommunication. I don't think Toffee had ill intent whatsoever, because I completely get it from Mimo's perspective. It could be like, oh, like bad actors would try to leak it. If the design is leaked early, Mimo should get, a fair amount of the social media clout that would come from it. But if it's leaked too early, then Mimo wouldn't get that. So I totally understand. I don't think Toffee was like being malintentioned whatsoever. I also understand from Toffee's perspective, like, because their Twitter account is small, they probably just thought, oh, I'm tweeting it to my friends because literally all I follow are my friends. So I can completely see that too. What happened here was a miscommunication, as the document said. So the doc continues. A day later, after making some adjustments, I guess Mimo, sorry, the name isn't put here. Mimo would share Varisa's in-game model on March 30th, 25 hours after Toffee's initial post. As they stated, the names were censored, but both of their names were in the toggle banner below. One day after Mimo's post, Toffee would follow up on this post with positive reception, showing they had been on good terms despite the mishap. So here Mimo says, Varisa redesign mod first in-game reveal. She comes with special sliders for extra customization so you can truly make her your own. I'm so happy with how adorable she turned out. And then Toffee quote retweeted it, guys go look, I'm going feral. This has been the last tweet expressing there had been mutual recognition between the two, with the upcoming section here to clarify what would lead to the fallout between Toffee and Mimo. 4. Pre, follow, and attribution. Mimo would then start working on Varisa's color variants, which she would post on Twitter on March 31st. So here, Mimo added the recolors, and then Mimo commented, here's the art I took inspiration from when making the mod. And then it was Toffee's post. On April 5th, Toffee would end up leaking the private convo between themselves and Mimo that occurred on March 31st on our chronological timeline, which we can use to determine that an argument occurred between them in the afternoon at around 2 p.m., where Toffee posted, no, I'm not, don't lie about me. I said I got no proper credit. Please don't lie about me. It's the DM where Toffee said, I'm sorry if it's annoying. I acknowledge you quoted my post under yours, but I really want to know why you said you took inspo when it's blatantly my own work. And then more DMs where Toffee's like, hey, people are praising it for being your design and you don't correct them. And this is the big DM that Toffee had sent Mimo on Discord. We've already read this one, where the highlighted phrase is, it's more so about the way you worded it rather than the actual presence of credit because it's there. Where again, Toffee says, when people praise it for being your design and you don't correct them, it feels like I'm being discredited and belittled. The doc reads, based on these messages Toffee leaked, we can see that Toffee does acknowledge that Mimo credited them. Toffee appears to be upset about how they were credited on Twitter, with some individuals commenting on her posts shared on the 30th and 31st, believing Mimo created Varisa's design. The artist expressed frustration at the way the credit was presented on Twitter, stating that being credited in-game was not enough, and that Mimo's responses to praise in the comments gave the impression that the design was solely her own. According to Mimo, she explained her reasoning for using the word inspired, citing notable differences between the model and the artist's original design. When the discussion continued over this extended period, Mimo expressed that she felt her boundaries were being repeatedly crossed. As stated, she would have to disengage from the conversation if it continued in that direction. Another leaked message between Mimo and Toffee would clarify this argument. We've also already read that message. By the way, Stepping back real quick to throw in my 2 cents, I know that this document is trying to be presented in the most unbiased way possible. To me, it still reads quite biased. This is just me analyzing it from the English perspective. Again, I don't know if the person who wrote this doc has English as their first language because it is alleged that it's not Mimo's first language. So obviously, again, I do want us to take into account when English or whatever language it is not your primary language and you're communicating in it, there can be things that are just lost to communications, right? Like if I were to talk to you in Mandarin, my Mandarin is okay conversationally, but there are just words that I don't know. So the words that I will supplement may not fully communicate my intent. I would say that if you do write the words, she explained her reasoning for using the word inspired, citing notable differences between the model and the artist's original design. I'm just gonna put a pause right here because I think anybody with eyeballs would not find that the additions Mimo added to be notable. I'm not saying this to try to be mean, but bluntly speaking, there were like 3 things added that were not color changes. Okay. A basket, a butterfly that was just moved. It was on the back and then it was moved to the ear, but it was still there, and 1 stocking was removed. And even about the stocking, you might be like, well, that was a design change. The original character's design had 1 stocking. So you just reverted it back to the original design. It still doesn't necessarily mean you made an additional change that was your unique interpretation, right? It was just the original design now instead of Toffee's. So that could be like a nuance there. In my opinion, the vitiligo doesn't count because it is a toggle you can turn off, and the body slider doesn't count because you can put it back to the regular body size. So while of course those are additions that would take a lot of time and effort to code, we are talking strictly about the character's outfit design here. And in that regard, in my personal opinion, the changes are very minor. But I just wanted to point that out. Guys, my cat is still staring at where he thinks the bug is, and I am not very happy because oh, there better not be a spider in my room, guys. I'm not like afraid of bugs, but I have carpet. So you guys, like, carpet and bugs do not get along, and I do not want to be jump scared with like spiders tickling my feet later, okay? Also, like, okay, one more thing about the boundary, which like the boundary thing, which I always try to be respectful about people's boundaries, but for me, I don't personally see how like really a boundary was crossed. I guess maybe Mimo thinks that like the boundary is nobody can question my designs. And then when Toffee was questioning the design, that was Mimo's boundary. I would say, like, just reading the DMs that we've seen, because so far the doc has showed us leaked as in the DMs that Toffee posted. So take into account they were DMs Toffee grabbed. Maybe Toffee was cherry picking. Maybe it seemed like Toffee was super respectful. Reading that personally, I did not get the impression that Toffee was trying to violate boundaries by pressing too much or like asking for more things. Toffee was just expressing their feelings about how they felt like they were belittled because the way Mimo was responding to some comments made it seem like Mimo was taking credit for the design. And I'm gonna be blunt, if I were Toffee and I made a design for somebody and then they commented the way Mimo did, I personally would feel uncomfortable too. The doc continues, while the conversation ended without direct hostility, it left both parties frustrated and emotionally drained. At this stage, the disagreement remained private and no public statements had been made. It would not be until April 5th that the artist Toffee made the conversation public by leaking the exchange. Twitter fallout and Discord discourse. Following the events of this argument, Toffee would make an accusation against Mimo that she'd end up profiting off of their design while not providing credit, despite the artist establishing earlier that Mimo did credit them in-game, which can be seen through both her posts via the banner. This contradicts the private convo where the artist had admitted Mimo credited them in-game, but was upset about how they worded it. The artist made after the argument would shift to claiming Mimo didn't give Toffee any credit whatsoever. So here, Toffee made a post, wait, the modder is going to make money off my design and they aren't even crediting me. Why didn't I think this through? After this post, 2 of the artist's friends would join Mimo servers on April 1st, and for their privacy, their profiles will be censored. So here, they join. This will lead to an argument between Mimo's Discord community and Toffee's friends before getting banned from the server altogether by a mod. While the messages that sparked the discourse had been deleted by the mods, proof of the interaction can be shown through the photos above and below, with Toffee directly confirming their friend defending their actions. Where Toffee posted, having mutuals who are getting heated over this. Okay, I'm so horrible with internet slang, guys. I know this is referring to like friends, okay? I'm like such a boomer when it comes to this, but having friends who are getting heated over all this for me is so nice. I pick good friends, guys. Oh, one of my followers or one of my friends. Like, okay, this is like Twitter slang, right? I'm sorry, I'm gonna digress for a sec. I just read this as oomphs in my head, okay? Every time I have to read it, I just read having oomphs, but like it's just referring to like friends, mutuals, like acquaintances, etc. It's supposed to stand for like one of my followers, but like the way it's used colloquially doesn't work with the acronym. So it's basically used as a noun. Maybe I'm too boomer for this, guys. Like, I'm not chronically on Twitter, okay? As contrary to what some people think. I read a lot of books, and in order to read like 13 books in 1 month, you are not chronically on Twitter. I digress though, but I would love to hear you guys comment your favorite book down below. I am currently reading The Fine Print. My friend and I are going to Disneyland in a couple days, so I'm trying to get a little fantasy theme park readout. But the doc continues. While we do not know when the argument occurred due to the argument being deleted by Mimo's mods based on Toffee's first friend joining at 12:18 a.m. and the artist tweet at 3 a.m., we can assume the argument occurred during this 3-hour time frame. According to Mimo, Toffee would also then get banned by her mods during this 3-hour time frame. She claims that they had a convo regarding this debate inside the server and would be let back in. We can confirm that Toffee was let back into the server on April 1st at 2:38 p.m. thanks to the message by the server's bot in the welcome channel. Or you can see here, Toffee was back. 6. The cancellation of the mod. Okay, like on a complete side note, I don't know how the friends fighting in Discord is relevant. Like, I mean, sure, they like fought, I guess. It happens. That's just me personally. To me, I guess this is a very solid, like, chronological order of events that happen, but in a way, like, maybe I'm being a little bit cynical, but it also kind of reads a little biased, maybe, because it's kind of like, oh, here's like other things that other people did, you know? In that regard, then Toffee could have gone on their doc and been like, here are all of like Mimo's followers harassing me. This shows Mimo is a piece of crap, you know? Whereas like on one hand, I would say that you really can't like attribute the actions of other people to that person, you know? Toffee's friends defending them in Discord. Unless Toffee actively told them, hey, go to Discord and bully Mimo, then the friends were acting of their own volition. You know, same thing with Mimo's followers, okay? If Mimo's followers go and harass Toffee, that fucking sucks. And I would hope that if it was actively happening, you know, that your audience is inspiring in harassment towards others, you would actually try to actively shut it down. But unless Mimo actively made a post being like, go harass Toffee, you can't really fault Mimo either for that. So to me, when stuff like that is included in these types of compilations where it's not really relevant to the party involved, to me, it kind of reads like it's used in a way to try to make Toffee's character look a certain type of way. And I know that I do sound biased towards Toffee reading this, but it's just because for me personally, I'm trying to remain unbiased, but with the information that I am presented so far, if I were in Toffee's shoes, I would be frustrated with Mimo's actions. And if I were in Mimo's shoes, I would not have done what Mimo did. So that's just why I'm sounding the way I sound. If I were Mimo, I would not have responded to the comments that way by making it seem like the design was mine. Because I do want to add, I don't know either of them. The first time I've heard of either of these people is literally covering the situation. So I have no reason to be biased towards one or the other. I literally don't know any of these people. The cancellation of the mod. Despite this mishap, the project would continue being worked on a little longer before being fully discontinued on April 1st later that evening. The public work in progress page would be locked, with the last message being sent on April 1st by a public viewer reacting to Toffee's work. By the way, this happening on April 1st is pretty funny. So here Toffee puts in some artwork and then a viewer says, cutie patootie. A member on the server would ask Mimo about the mod's cancellation on April 3rd. Mimo said she had begun working on a new design for Varisa outside of the artist's version 2 days ago, meaning she started on the design April 1st, the day of the fallout. So here the viewer asked, and Mimo says, yeah, I gave up on posting the mod. I started working on my own design for the past 2 days. I will post in the work in progress channel tomorrow once I finish up the shading and such of the model. Mimo would then make an official announcement on her Twitter making a new design not associated with the artist's version. She created a work in progress page for her redesign of Arisa shortly after the Twitter announcement on April 3rd. So here we can see on April 3rd, that was the tweet we've already read as well, where Mimo directly tags Toffee. And this is the redesign channel. 7. Aftermath harassment. After the Varisa project was closed on April 1st, the artist would either silently leave Mimo's server or be banned, with Mimo claiming the latter to have happened, meaning most likely Toffee is banned from the server. Mimo would then make a comment about the situation in the new Varisa post of the redesign. So here Mimo says, it's been rough, please don't send any harassment to Toffee as a disclaimer. Toffee ended up accusing me of a lot of things like not crediting their design and me profiting off of it while sending their friends to harass me. After I made a post mentioning that I'll be scrapping the old version to make my own design, Toffee ended up saying really mean things about me on their page. I have already given them multiple warnings that I'll be making the issue public if they continue, and they did. I tried making a post compiling the shit they've said about me, but I was overwhelmed by the negative comments from Toffee's friends, so I ended up deleting the post. Honestly, I feel like I don't have any friends to rely on at this point, since I was made out to be the villain in a situation where I was harassed by a group of people simply because I wanted to protect myself by calling it out. Mimo would provide provide context through what we've already discussed, including screenshots of the artist reaching out to Mimo to make a mod. So Mimo showed proof of Toffee contacting them. Also, like a side note, I don't think the way the communication happened was ever point of debate. I thought it was like always obvious that Toffee was the one that reached out, but maybe, there's like other conversations that weren't shown here that there was that. So this is the screenshot that we've already seen. Toffee had posted this. Here is the finished version Toffee posted. The doc continues. However, not long after these initial posts, there were more arguments regarding the accusations of theft and credibility involving Mimo and Toffee alongside public viewers who defended Toffee's actions inside Mimo's redesign post. This will lead to one of Mimo's mods to shut down the debates regarding the Verisa drama. So here the mod says, the convo got really unrelated, so I deleted the entire chunk. If you have points you'd like to address, do send a DM to Mimo about it. Thank you for your compliance. Sometime after the artist had been removed from the server, Toffee would open up discussion on their straw page in regards to the fallout. Toffee would end up receiving harassment from those defending Mimo or disagreeing with Toffee's actions up until this point. So here, Toffee says her dogs will probably cook me. And these were the posts, the mean comments, and we've seen them because Toffee has also posted that in the whole thread we read. In any case, both sides have received harassment and reacted with hostility, leading to the accusations of theft and profiting off the design Toffee had made without being credited. I mean, I will also add one other thing is that Toffee had mentioned that Mimo had never provided evidence of being harassed. I personally, when people say they're being harassed, I typically believe them, right? Because internet people are mean as hell. I've been on the receiving end of it. I believe it. I don't think like necessarily you need to prove it. I would say that if that is going to be one of the arguments you're going to hinge something on, then you might need to prove it for internet people to believe you. That's just all I'll say about that. Number 8, the accusations against Mimo. I aim to end misinformation and stop future harassment from either side, as it has only led to more conflict and tension with all parties involved. Toffee would accuse Mimo of the following: providing zero credit for their design. Mimo is profiting off of their design. Mimo had plagiarized Toffee's original design. So here, the tweet where Toffee says, the modder is going to make money off my design and they aren't even crediting me. Why didn't I think this through? Toffee wrote her new design is actually inspired by my design, by the way. So she's still stealing without credits. And then a Twitter user is defending Toffee. Toffee says, right, she doesn't even know Zulu culture because I did all the research. And they say it's like a school group project. It's a life lesson. And Toffee says, bro, I know she was hell to work with. So 8.1, the accusation went zero credit towards the artist. The first accusation being directed at Mimo is that she had stolen the artist's design without giving any credit whatsoever. Based on the records presented in this document, this claim appears to be incorrect, as when Mimo first shared the cancelled design in her now deleted post, we can see the toggle banner had Mimo's, the artist, and the community modder's name. Yes, the names are present. So here the doc reads, as we discussed in the pre-follow and attribution session, the artist was upset about the way the credit was presented on Twitter in the post above, stating that being credited in-game was not enough in the pictures below, which we have gone through in section 4 of this doc. So that was this post here. As discussed previously, this is not the same as what the artist is currently accusing Mimo of not providing any credit towards the design, meaning Toffee backtracked and is now claiming that Mimo didn't provide any credit whatsoever, which is incorrect based on the available evidence gathered below. By the way, again, reading this document to me reads very biased, but I would just backtrack a little bit. So this document is basically trying to discredit Toffee by basically stating Toffee made a tweet being like, the artist never credited me. Okay, Toffee did make this shady tweet March 31st being like, the mod is gonna make money on my design and they aren't even crediting me. Why didn't I think this through? 15-year-olds are gonna make little shady petty tweets. Is what it is, bro. But I would say like the substantial meat and bones of the situation that I think the semantics we really should be arguing is the big thread that Toffee posted, which I think was just not mentioned like really at all anywhere in this big document. In my opinion, Toffee's big thread here reads extremely well written and very, very well put together. Sure, did Toffee make a bunch of petty tweets? Yeah, it didn't look like Toffee added Mimo in any of the petty tweets they were making. They're just making little petty tweets, you know? People do that. I also think people on Twitter get way too mad about people subtweeting. Yo, it is what it is, bro. Like, you don't like them subtweeting, just, I don't know, unfollow them, right? It's the same thing as school, you know? You're gonna, like, talk a little smack about people you don't like to your friends. Just happens. Maybe I don't read too much into it, but I genuinely could not give, like, two craps about what other people think about me, so maybe this is just me. But the way I read this is that Toffee had fully acknowledged in this thread that they were credited, but there were two things again. Basically, they were credited, but they were dissatisfied with how they were credited because people were confusing the design for being something Mimo organically made. And in my opinion, if that happens, if the way you gave credit had led your audience to misconstrue the original creator, then you didn't credit well enough. That's my personal opinion. But two, it's also the fact that Mimo was trying to claim the design was originally theirs. by being like, I added 3 things. So in my opinion, if you're trying to draw on the argument that Toffee is inconsistent with their claims, then in my opinion, Mimo's claims are also inconsistent. That's just me. I just think that this point is like a moot point because the big thing that we should be arguing is not what the little tweets that Toffee made, but the big thread where Toffee was lining up all this information. And again, nowhere in the thread did Toffee say, I was never credited. So to me, this is a moot point in the document. But the document is trying to present itself to me as unbiased, which it's reading heavily biased to me. But anyways, and if I know that I will come off biased too. Again, I am biased based on who is acting in the way that I would act because my moral compass and my views on who I'm going to align with will obviously align with how I would behave as a person. But anyways, another point that I would make too is I think it is completely fair on a second argument for Toffee to backtrack, where again the document is stating Toffee backtracked with their statement, the hidden implication is not a reliable narrator. But I would argue that Toffee actually has like, why is my cat still staring at where this hypothetical bug is? This is freaking me out now. In my opinion, Toffee is also completely valid in backtracking because they didn't know how it would play out. Where Toffee was saying, Mimo said, oh, I'm just gonna credit you the way that I normally would credit, but with the big post, your name would be in there, your name would be in the graphic, whatever. And Toffee initially probably was like, oh, okay, But I think the core issue again was that Toffee just wanted people to know the design was theirs. And maybe initially the way that Mimo was gonna credit sounded fine to Toffee. And then in actual implementation, what happened was people weren't reading the quote retweet. And Mimo's argument was, it's not my fault people don't read. But Toffee's side was that, oh, I didn't realize that if you credit me this way, people are gonna get confused and not think the design is mine, And I think the core thing that Toffee is just trying to get at is Toffee just wanted people to know this was their design. And the way the execution of the credit happened, people were confused. And is it Mimo's fault that people got confused? It could be with how they're responding to comments, but Mimo can't predict the future either, right? So, of course, Mimo may not have realized that people weren't gonna read the quote retweet in the comments. So, again, if I were Mimo personally, what I would have done is if I saw people getting confused, I again would have clarified it in the comments, like responding to the people, being like, wow, your design was so good. I would have responded if it were me, oh, thank you, I did a 3D render. By the way, the actual outfit design was made by Toffee, to clear it up. We have to not read the surface level issue, but the actual core issue at what is being argued here, and that the core issue is that people were confusing Toffee's design for Mimo being the designer of the outfit and everything, and Toffee just wanted people to know it was them. So, the doc continues, 8.2, Accusation 2, profiting off the artist's design. The second accusation against Mimo is that she profited off of Toffee's design without providing them compensation. This is also incorrect based on the evidence provided, as Mimo had made no official post on her Patreon page about Verisa whatsoever, with the last post being about Diana, which was published on Patreon March 31st. So here we have that, published 4 days ago. Furthermore, we can see the outfit designer of this Diana mod being credited alongside Mimo. It's true for mods Mimo had created in the past as well, with mods being credited. So here you can see all the credits are listed. Once again, there had been no public release of the artist's rendition of the Verisa mod, as there is neither post with Verisa on Patreon or Game Banana whatsoever. So they search for Verisa, there are no recent posts. Game Banner, no posts. Mimo's last official release on Game Banana is Phoebe in Wonderland, which is available for anyone to download, was March 16th, 2025, with the mod being updated March 30th, 2025. Once again, Verisa is completely absent here. To reiterate this claim, when mods are deleted on Game Banana, they become trashed or private, meaning you can no longer download that submission, but can still preview the title to that mod, with the example provided below. So here we can see the mod has been made private by the owner and is unavailable. This means Mimo published the Verisa mod based on the artist's design. It would appear alongside other searches of Verisa in her submissions, meaning she had not profited off of Toffee's design. Yeah, I think, again, this is a fair thing to add in here, sure. I think it's a very, very minor point because we have 5 pages dedicated to a shady subtweet that a 15-year-old made. Sorry. Maybe I'm too cynical. I don't know. I mean, you guys get mad at me in the comments for being too optimistic, but bro, this is like one shady subtweet where your name wasn't even mentioned. Like, I don't think anybody saw that tweet. I'm gonna be real. 8.3, plagiarizing the artist's design. Finally, the last accusation against Mimo is her plagiarizing Toffee's version of Verisa. This is what I wanted to read. As shown at the end of section 6 in this document, we can see that Mimo had created a new model not based on Toffee's concept. Furthermore, Mimo had confirmed she started work on a new design 2 days prior to the question asked on April 3rd. So April 1st was when the new design. This is the screenshot we've already read. This is the redesign posted April 3rd. As discussed in section 2, development context of this document, Mimo would make changes to the old model not based on the artist's concept art. Mimo would tell the artist the changes she made directly and they'd be positive about the changes. Guys, I am trying to be so objective right now. I'm gonna start crashing out reading this doc. I swear to God. Here, again, we can see that Toffee is being positive, asking like, oh, why are the beads different colors? And then here Mimo's like, I gave her a basket. I changed the beads color because, the beads on the skirt are blue, pink, and yellow. So here, Mimo says, oh, I didn't want to add the colors because she had so many colors going on. And Toffee says, no, okay, makes sense. And then here, Toffee is being positive about it. I'm going to crash out. Toffee being happy about the changes that you made, that is not relevant in my opinion here. Because the point we are trying to argue is, we are arguing, is Mimo's design original or is it heavily inspired, basically Toffee's design, right? Is it Toffee's design, or did Mimo make enough changes to reasonably use the word inspired? That is what we were arguing here. At this point in the conversation on March 29th, because this document feels like this document, in the way that it presented itself, tried so hard to be unbiased, but I'm not falling for it. On March 29th, the design wasn't posted yet. So therefore, the credit was not posted yet. So therefore, Toffee is still under the impression that they're gonna get proper credit for the design at this point. Of course, they're still gonna be happy, duh. So here, we've already read this conversation, but again, Toffee is being enthusiastic about the changes. Again, because at this point in the conversation, Toffee does not know the way that they are credited by Mimo would lead people to be confused. We are still seeing the conversation where Toffee is happy. Like, the doc reads, based on these messages in the project, Mimo made changes to the following aspects outside the concept art. Didn't add orange, purple, and kiwi beads. Opted for cyan, pink, and yellow beads. Opted for one stocking instead of two. Redesigned the butterfly in her hair. Changed the mask design on the belt. Added new butterfly to ear. Added black choker around neck. Added basket to hip. Added vitiligo. I will add, the way, again, this information is presented is very biased, because if you look at it, it looks like with all of the bullet points that there were a ton of changes added. And then you read the bullet points and you realize 2 bullet points actually refer to only 1 point, right? Didn't add colors. Change colors. That's the same thing. You change the colors to a different color. That is 1 bullet point. I don't mean to be like some English professor up in here, but this, I'm just saying, like, I'm gonna lose it. Opted for 1 stocking instead of 2. You could argue that this is a valid change that Mimo had made to make the design more unique, right? It was done with intention to show off the vitiligo. We can also recognize that that was literally present in the original character design. The original character Varisa's outfit had only 1 stocking, so you just reverted it back to the original design. So it's still not your change. You know what I mean? Like, it's still the original. Like, if you didn't change anything from the original, then you didn't add anything. Redesign the butterflies in her hair. Change the mask design on belts. Isn't the mask design the same? Like, are my eyes failing me? I swear to God, the mask looked the same. Added basket to hip. Added vitiligo. Again, I would argue the vitiligo doesn't count if it's something that could be removed. You know what I mean? Like, if it is a toggle where you turn it on or off. Like, if I took Venti's design and then I added a toggle where you turn his outfit pink, it's still Venti. That, in my opinion, doesn't count as a valid change. To argue that it is a change you made to make it more uniquely yours. Semantics. The doc reads, to compare, here's the artist's concept design they sent to Mimo before she started working on the model, as well as the model she made for Toffee prior to their Fallout comparison. All the red circles are what was removed, the yellow circles are what was changed, and the blue circles are what was added to the model that was never part of the concept art. The image below highlights changes added to the model that were not presented in the original concept art, which is shown through the orange circles. I don't see any orange circles. Sorry. Oh, okay. So I was confused about the mask, right? I see what they mean by the mask, because Toffee changed the mask to this design. And look, the mask is different. You know how it's different? It's because it's the original mask. Again, do I need to make the point again that if your change to it was not changing it at all, it is still not you making it unique, right? Like, you removing 1 stocking doesn't make it more uniquely your design, because that is the original Genshin Impact design. She only had 1 stocking on. You not touching the mask on the belt and leaving it the way it is not you making an additional change that spins the design to something that is uniquely your creation, you not changing it. So the mask is again a moot point. The stalking is a moot point. So if we look at the design, right? And again, I think the biggest thing is not even the number of aspects that were changed, but what core elements were changed. Like if you were to break this design of Barisa down to its most identifiable elements, I would say the biggest elements are the horn tattoos, the shawl that was added because that was not in the original design, and the fluff on her legs, the fluffy leg warmers. I would say those three to me are the biggest changes made to this design that makes it a unique design. And if we look here, right, making the stockings fuzzy, like making her wear a giant shawl and putting the horn tattoos, in my opinion, those are the biggest ones. And all of that is kept the same as Toffee's. So if we're going to make the argument of the scale of the change matters, then that would be the argument we would make. Even if we're going to argue on the number of changes that were made to the design, there were only, in my personal opinion, 3 changes that I personally count as valid in terms of like, oh, this is something you added to it. Okay, change number 1 being the butterfly. This one's a 50-50 because it was present in Toffee's design. It was just moved. 2 is adding a choker. So you added something. And removing something would count too, unless you removing it just reverted it back to its original state. Then that doesn't count, in my personal opinion. Actually, I think it's just those 2. Oh, sorry, and the basket, and the basket. So we have 3. The butterfly, the choker, and the basket. Because the 2 items that were removed, again, reverted the design back to the original part of the design. So I think if you only change 3 things, it doesn't count. That's me. And then the doc continues. Furthermore, the artists will make changes to their artwork based on Mimo's changes to the model in the last post they made in the server before being removed. So this is their art, you know, referring to the butterfly, the choker, and then no basket, the mask. We can establish based on these pictures that Mimo had made significant changes to the model outside of the artist's design. I disagree, but I'm going to continue reading. The artist would accuse Mimo for plagiarizing the design they made for Mimo prior to the fallout and mod cancellation of their design. Where Toffee posts, her new design is actually inspired by my design, by the way, so she's still stealing without credits. This is incorrect based on the available evidence, as we have just compared the changes Mimo made to the model outside of Toffee's concept art. Like before, these were the changes made to Mimo's new model outside of the artist's influence. So this is the new model, you know, where we can see all of these: remove the stockings, remove beads, redesign choker, redesign belt, redesign ahoge into heart, redesign hoof pattern, change color of leg warmers, change color of rings. Mask became a belt buckle, added a new shirt, added a new jacket, added a thigh strap, added seed packets, reverted Varisa's bow. In my personal opinion, the changes made to this design is very significant to make it a new design. There were so many changes made to the new model compared to the old model that I had to double check multiple times that I didn't miss any, because it's a lot. Again, sorry, that just reads very biased to me again. Again, it's fair to be biased towards your friend if you're making a document for your friend, but then like if you try to present the document as something very objective, it's not true. Once again, there are aspects of the new model that the artist accused Mimo of plagiarizing that hadn't come from the original concept art they made at all. The artist even took aspects of Mimo's model when drawing the Varisa art shared earlier. To reiterate, here's a full list of changes that were made to the old and new models that differed from the concept art the artist sent. So we have the old model and then the new model list. 9. Purpose for document. I wish to reiterate once more that I do not condemn any harassment of any kind to any individuals involved. This document was made with the sole intent of preventing any rumors while disproving accusations not supported by the available evidence that can lead to even more harassment and hate. There was miscommunication involved between Mimo and the artist, but that does not make any harassment whatsoever from anyone acceptable. Even if you know the identity of any individuals, please don't harass them or send them threats. I'm hoping this document will prevent things from escalating from either side. Once again, this is not a call-out post, it's a document made in hopes of allowing everyone involved to put this drama behind us and move on. The document was completed April 6th. So I just have a couple of extra points to add on top of me like almost crashing out at the end of the document. For me, it's always like a big pet peeve when people try to present themselves as like a force of authority, but then like you can read that the authority is biased. Like, I don't know. For me, it's just like, bro, are you serious? Just admit that you are a friend that made the document. You know what I mean? Like, that's fine. That's totally fine. I just don't like things that are misleading. For this document, there's a couple of problems that I have with it. And I'm strictly just speaking from like an analytical perspective of if I was in college and presented this document to analyze. Is one that they basically like the way the tone of this document reads is as if they are shading the information that Toffee provided in their thread. They allude to leaks. So they never actually really mentioned the full call out thread that Toffee made. It's like briefly mentioned, but out of the 55 pages, it appeared on like a quarter of one page, you know? The tone of this document reads as if Toffee leaked a bunch of stuff. Like they leaked DMs, they leaked this, that. Sure, they posted it. You could argue, should they have gotten permission to post DMs? Who knows, right? People argue that, the ethics of that. But I would state that no additional information is provided. So the way they try to present the information Toffee had provided is that it is like shady leaks. And so the way that I read into that is that, okay, if you're going to argue that what Toffee has provided are leaks, it implies there's more information from DMs that we haven't seen. But this document doesn't actually provide any more DMs, any more screenshots, anything else that Toffee hasn't already provided themselves, which to me makes me feel like Toffee is a credible narrator, because if you couldn't substantiate and provide any more evidence contrary to what we have seen from Toffee, and you are the opposing side, that makes me even more likely to believe that Toffee's narration of events is relatively true. Right? Obviously, it will be colored with Toffee's biases, but it doesn't seem like Toffee presented any misinformation with the screenshots. It does not look like they cherry picked things that made them look better, because otherwise, more screenshots would have been provided by this document, I assume. One. Two, I wish this document would cover the thread, right? And like, for me to take this document more seriously, I would have hope to read about fully debunking the big thread that Toffee had made, instead of cherry picking what like petty little subtweets that a 15-year-old made, because that makes the document, in my opinion, lose credibility, because it really just feels like you're cherry picking some silly little tweets, you know? And of course, they could hurt your feelings. And of course, it's a little bit of misinformation where Toffee's like, oh, they didn't credit me at all. And like a huge chunk of this document was dedicated to that one little tweet where Toffee was like, they didn't credit me at all. Bro, it's like a 15-year-old that was like upset that made a tweet. What actually mattered, which is what I was hoping to like see debunked, was the big thread that Toffee made, which wasn't really debunked in this. The final thing that I have to say about this document, which to me is wild, like this literally was the hill that Mimo died on. And a lot of this was also miscommunication. It was just a lot of miscommunication as well, which again could have easily been resolved if both parties just like gave each other some benefit of doubt, which I think due to trust eroding, didn't happen, which happens, you know? But I do think that literally all of this could have been avoided if Mimo was like, hey, Toffee, I'm so sorry for the way I responded to some comments. I completely understand that it can make it seem like I'm taking credit for the design and belittling the impact you had on the design. I'm sorry. I'm gonna respond to it right now to clear it up. That literally would have fixed everything. This is like wild to me, because this is like 55 pages of doubling down. And Mimo didn't write this, to be fair. Mimo may not have even known this was being written. So don't go like hating on anybody involved. But that's just crazy to me, because again, I would have never done what Mimo did in the first place, just me personally. But that was it. All you had to say was, I'm so sorry. My bad. I will say, hey, by the way, the design was Toffee's to just correct the misinformation for people who were confused. That would have been so fucking easy. But then Mimo also seems to be like very, very adamant that they made substantial changes to the design to make it uniquely theirs. And I personally just disagree with that. And this document seems to also think that substantial changes were made. And I, again, disagree with this document. I would love to hear your thoughts down below. And again, if you do leave your thoughts, let's please be respectful at the end of the day. I don't want this to be like a dog piling on people. That is never the intention. But guys, in my personal opinion, if I take Venti and I put pink hair ties, a pink flower, and a pink basket on him, this is still Venti. I just added 3 things to him. I'm just gonna leave it at that. But here's what Mimo had to say about the document. So Mimo writes, I strongly advise reading this to understand the full context from a third-party neutral perspective. It's important to get the facts before forming opinions. I always say this, but in every scenario, there are 2 sides and the truth, okay? And every side would like to argue that their side is fact. But I'm just gonna argue semantics. And I said this about the whole needy situation as well, because again, there are people who like to present their side as the truth and call it fact, whereas we still have to acknowledge that it is still your side. But I digress. Toffee says, I'm reading the document about me, and it's either removing important context, blatantly wrong, or a misunderstanding. Hello? Crying emoji. And then I would read the comments under the post Mimo made, except the comments are like disabled, so I can't. Here are some comments under Toffee's, where Cora adds, I thought maybe it would show some new context, but I really didn't see anything. Mimo said she didn't even know the person who made the doc before this. And Toffee says, the thing is, a lot of the things they're pointing out are things I talked about in the server, things that are common sense or removing context from the comments. And another person, Yumiko Hart, writes, funny fact, One of the nicer modders I know reposted and quoted it with neutral, yeah, sure, dot dot dot. And Mimo immediately blocked them, lol. So it's pretty obvious the third party definitely isn't neutral at all if Mimo blocked a fellow modder just over a simple quote. And Toffee writes, "What's sending me is somebody DM me telling me they expected me to be really bitchy from the neutral doc, but when they saw my messages being all kind and flowery, they felt confused. Like, honest to God, I didn't even read the whole thing, but the parts I've read are bad, bro." And they basically have a long back and forth where Toffee was saying that, like, they stopped reading after the circle bit because they were confused. And Toffee says, "I'm actually crying because my thread is very easy to follow, and all my proof is not only truthful, but also non biased. So I don't know why she's telling people to read the non biased one when I ran this thread by multiple people to make it sound as neutral as possible." And then Yumiko says, "I mean, Mimo has always known to be really entitled, even towards her clients who pay her, and a self victimizing habit. So honestly, I'm not surprised." And Toffee says, "I'm not either at this point, but like going as far as to lie about a 15-year-old in multiple ways is genuinely crazy." Like it gets to that point. But yeah, I do think the final thing that we need to add to keep in context with everything is like, I don't know Mimo's age, but if they are an adult and we have a 15-year-old they're beefing with, I mean, again, look, there are some potential cases where you may have valid reasons to beef with a 15-year-old on Twitter. I don't know, man. Twitter beef be kind of crazy sometimes. If you're an adult and they're 15, bro, like the situation is as minor as like in some of the comments you were responding to, it made it people thought that the design was yours and all the 15-year-old wanted was a, hey, the 15-year-old made it and that would have been chill. And we ended up in this situation. That's why to me it's wild. But anyways, I would love to hear your thoughts down below about this. Please be respectful again in the comment section. Don't dog on me for my looks either, okay? I swear to God. I was a little lazy and I didn't want to do my makeup, so that's what I look like this now. Yay. Also, I'm probably gonna stop wearing foundation in my videos. Like, I used to wear foundation in my videos and y'all will be like, your skin looks so good. It's not. Now it is pretty good because I paid $1,000 for this. But I would wear foundation and then I would sit here and film for hours. This filming took me like 2.5 hours, I think. No, a little over 2 hours. Probably 2 hours and 15 minutes. And I would just get acne because I'm sitting here under my lights and getting greasy and filming. And I don't know if you guys have ever noticed, but you can sometimes see like a pimple appear on my face over the course of really long videos, like 2+ hour long videos. So I'm probably gonna stop wearing foundation in my videos. So yeah, if you got to the end of the video, you're an absolute goat. I appreciate you so much, guys. Oh, I'm gonna get a second cat. I'm gonna get a kitten soon. I don't know what to name him yet. If you have kitty name ideas, let me know. My boyfriend and I are thinking about Pip, short for Piplup. I also thought about Moo, and I thought I really like the name Moo, but my thing is I don't want to name my cat something that is too commonly said in English because I don't want to confuse my cat. But like the word moo is common. What is wrong with my cat? He like is laying down, stretched out as long as possible with one paw on where he thought the bug was. He's so funny. But yeah, like I don't want a word that's too commonly said in English. Like my cat's name is a food. I don't want to say it right now because then he's gonna like get up from his little sleepy position. But it's not commonly said in English unless you're actually talking about the food. But moo, like move, good morning, like that moo syllable is said too much. So I'm thinking Pip maybe because that's not commonly said in English. But let me know if you have any better ideas. It's gonna be like a tabby ragdoll mix, and the kitty is gonna be very, very gray and brown from what I've seen in the one photo that I saw of it. That I saw of the cat. So yeah. Anyways, I'm yapping too much. Like this video, appreciate it if you like and subscribe. Don't forget to check me out on Etsy. I have digital goods and stuff over there, and on Coffee. I have free resources for y'all if you're content creators, and I also stream on Twitch 3 days a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, Saturdays, 6 p.m. PST. I hope to catch you guys there or in another video. All right, guys, bye.